ever. Amen. Dr. Christine has spoken to us on several other occasions, and I hope that she will be willing to be a useful resource for us continuing in this relationship with her. But I've asked her, especially this evening, to speak about character strengths. I asked you to fill in the free questionnaire on the Via Character website, and I'm sure that many of you have done. I've done mine and printed mine out here. And just as the same as each of you, I'm hoping to learn something for myself and for those in my care from Dr. Christine. So without any further ado, I'm going to mute myself and hand over to Dr. Christine. If you want to make comments and raise questions, then please do so in the chat function, and we'll gather some of those up at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for inviting me to speak to you all today on this powerful topic of character strengths. It looks like I'm unable to share my screen. If I can get those privileges, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I had to unshare mine, I think. So I've unshared my screen. Can you share yours now?
It still says host as disabled.
Okay, then let me allow everyone to share. Don't anyone else share your screen at the moment, but Dr. Christine, please share yours.
Okay, there we go.
Fantastic.
All right, so happy to be with you all today to talk about this important topic. My training is in counseling psychology, but this is an area that I've been interested in for over 20 years now, since graduate school, in the area of how to harness our character strengths so that we are able to use those for greater resilience and flourishing and just learning how to thrive a little bit better, because oftentimes we will focus on our weaknesses and that isn't very helpful. I'm glad we have about an hour and a half to discuss this. Maybe the first hour or so will be presentation, and then please feel free to ask questions. You can also click on that QR code or my website. It'll take you to my website if you want to have a further conversation about this after our talk today. But again, the purpose of this is to help us to find greater resilience, how to flourish, and how to thrive. So I want to give you a little bit of a history about the character strengths, about the survey, the VIA survey. It stands for values in action, and how that helps us to kind of harness our strengths so that we can become more resilient. And resilience is actually an entire science in and of itself, not just a word that's thrown around oftentimes, but learning how to navigate difficulties and challenges without succumbing to those difficulties and challenges. And so hopefully I can give you some overview about all of this stuff today. And then again, like I said, you can always reach out for more after today as well. So we start off by, obviously at times we have all felt like this, like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, like things are very difficult and challenging, that we don't have a good handle on the adversities that we have in our life. And this happens to everybody in the course of life, from the points of birth to death, because we will always experience something challenging. It could be minor, it could be really major, it could be life altering. And sometimes we feel like we can't get a handle on that. But hopefully by the end of today, we will learn ways that we can get a handle on these challenges. Specifically, think about the last few years when there was the pandemic. How was this a challenging time for you? Has there been specific areas of challenge? Has there been specific areas of growth? Have you learned some things about yourself or about others? What were some of the strengths that you've come up with in that time? And have you learned a new skill and how to adapt to those challenges? And again, the last 3 years or so have really been taxing on so many of us, because this is the first time we've experienced something like this globally. And we're just kind of starting to come out of it and learning a lot about those 3 years and what they have meant for us physically and emotionally, psychologically, and even spiritually. Despite the difficulties that we have, we hope to strive for joy and happiness and the benefits that come from what challenges do. We hope to not live in a period of sadness for too long, but eventually reach joy. And that's what the positive psychology kind of is all about. It's a scientific study that discusses optimal human functioning and how better to understand factors that help people and communities to thrive. So we know that there are difficulties, we know that there are challenges, and it's not something that means we're going to ignore those things, but how can we thrive even though there are challenges and difficulties? And these are concepts that have been studied psychologically for many years, things like emotions and hope and strengths, and how to build and broaden our thinking and our perspective and our problem solving, and how to be more resilient. These things have been studied for decades, but the kind of founder of the positive psychology movement was the American Psychological Association president in 1998, and his name was Martin Seligman. And he said that psychologists really need to return to their roots and not only focus on mental illness, not to ignore it, but not just to focus on mental illness, but we should also focus on becoming more fulfilled and productive and how to find our talents and our strengths and use them. And so the science of positive psychology was kind of already there, but in separate pieces. And he kind of put this umbrella over all of it and really wanted to study what is well-being, what is happiness, how do we reach a state of flow, which is we're really engaged in the work that we're doing and it's really meaningful and encouraging. How do we study personal strengths, wisdom, creativity? How does this apply to groups and institutions? And ultimately, our goal is to flourish and to have positive mental health and prosperity that is at least managing mental illness, but hopefully eventually free from mental illness. And so how do we reach a point of vitality and positive functioning in private and social realms? And so our ultimate goal, again, is to flourish. How do we live optimally? How do we experience good things in life? And how does this hold true for our work, for our business, for our relationships, even for our spiritual life? And research right now tells us that for every negative event, we need at least 3 positive events to kind of shake those negative events, or at least have the positive overpower or overwhelm the negative events, or to keep things more balanced. So 3-to-1 ratio, 3 positive to 1 negative. And when we flourish, this has been consistent in the research with greater career achievement, greater mastery over challenges, greater goal assessment and goal setting and achievement, higher levels of self-control, and higher levels of perseverance, which we'll see today is really closely related with resilience. So with positive psychology, some people think the myths associated with positive psychology, I should say, that this is really unrealistic or it's really selfish. I'm just focusing on me and I'm not focusing on others. But we are trying to say that it's not simply consistent only of positive emotions and thinking, but that we can hold both the positive and the negative simultaneously. Because oftentimes when we're going through a challenge, we only focus and blow up, and it's like tunnel vision, and all we see is the negative. This kind of brings some balance back to the equation where we can see the positive and the negative simultaneously. We're trying to look at happiness and flourishing on an individual level, but obviously if you're doing well on an individual level, you're going to contribute to the positivity of the groups that you are in, whether it's your church group or family group, work group, whatever setting you are in. And so increasing well-being in one area will increase well-being in other areas. Positive psychology also looks at being content in different parts of life. So it helps you to look at your past, your present, and your future. It helps you look at your individual characteristics that contribute to positivity, and also looks at a group framework. Again, how does this contribute to your community and to your citizenship and your altruism and giving to others? And your work ethic and things like that. So it contributes to a lot of different areas, not just 1 or 2. And so it can span many areas or disciplines. It can be used to instill hope and meaning in psychotherapy. It can be used in our education to increase things like motivation or positive affect or creativity. It can be used in work to create a greater authentic environment and make genuine contributions. And it can contribute to our larger society by increasing things like altruism, communication, our moral character. And it can increase relationship health in families, from parenthood to couples relationships to a sense of commitment within the family itself. So this spans a lot of different disciplines and even contributes to, it's very similar to things that we speak of in both our liturgy, the Coptic liturgy, as well as this verse that tells us to look at both the positive and the negative. In the day of adversity, know that God has appointed that, as well as the day of prosperity and joy. And so our ultimate goal is to be filled with joy and gladness, so that we can abound in every good deed. So there's kind of spiritual connotations to this as well. A brief history is that before World War II and immediately after, psychologists wanted to identify people's talents and fit people to jobs when they were coming back from World War II. Obviously, they were treating things like PTSD, which was labeled kind of shell shock back after World War II. So they were treating kind of mental illnesses, but also wanted people to fit back into jobs and positions that would be meaningful to them and where they could succeed. And so it wasn't just necessary to treat mental illness anymore. There had to be more, and the focus started to shift slowly from pathology and weakness and deficits to more strengths and talents. And this is kind of how this all started and reached kind of a peak when Martin Seligman started talking about it in 1998. So the challenge that we all have is to focus, yes, on mental illness and human suffering, but also to focus on things like, where do people thrive when things are going fairly smoothly, and that there isn't this tension, or we have to focus on treating an illness. What causes people to flourish and have meaning? If there are conditions of survival, obviously we have to study the mental illness aspect, but how can we apply positive psychology to a variety of areas of our life, including education, including all of these other positive areas in our life? So the core concepts of positive psychology are strength theory, which we will focus on a lot today, but we will also touch briefly on this broaden and build theory, how all these positive emotions and positive focus undoes the undoing hypothesis, undoing the negative things, and also creating resilience in each and every one of us. So the focus today is going to be on strengths, but we will also touch on these other three as well. So strengths are managing, not focusing on weaknesses, understanding how to build from our strengths, rather than just having a let's fix it approach. We are focusing on our strengths and finding ways to build them. So for example, imagine if you have children and your children bring home 4 A's on their report cards. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in the UK, but that's the highest grade in the US. And they brought home 1 F, which is the lowest grade that you can get in the US. Obviously, if you are a parent, you're going to hyper focus on that F and say, why did you get this F, and what went wrong, and all these problems that occurred that caused you to bring home this F, rather than focusing on the 4 A's and determining what skills they had that created those 4 A's, and then using those skills to apply it to the failing grade to bring that grade back up. So with this positive perspective, you focus on the strengths to help out the weak areas. We were going to have both, but it depends on what you shift your focus to. If we do not focus on the strengths, the person becomes average and they never reach their full potential. So that's kind of what research tells us over and over again. So that's what's really, really important about focusing on our strengths. We can try and should try some things, and we can put our mind to things and work hard on them and to accomplish them. And we should try new things. But when we focus on what is actually our strength, we are not wasting our energy on things that we may not be as good at, and instead focus our energy on what we are good at to build the weaknesses. So for example, if you like to play the piano, but you're not very good at it, yes, you can spend some time playing the piano and working hard at it, but it can become frustrating if this is not one of your strengths. Much more so when we're talking about character strengths that are part of your personality, rather than a talent like playing the piano. So focusing on our strengths will lead to long-term success because it's something that we have a natural inclination towards. So the more that we find our strengths and capitalize on them, the greater that we will thrive in our everyday life in every aspect of our lives. So here are the character strengths. Here's all 24 of them. If you took the quiz, you will see these listed for you in order of what is the highest to what is the lowest. Even the lowest one, we don't call it a weakness, we call it a lower strength. And there are no two people on the planet, alive or in the future or currently, that are going to have the exact same makeup for all 24. So each of us all around the world, all 8 billion of us, have all 24 of these inside of us, but no two people, even twins or even spouses that have been married forever, or best friends or parent and child, no matter how close the relationship is, no one is going to have the same 24 in the same order. So we're all very unique, but we're all very similar at the same time. And these character strengths, there are other measures that will measure and identify things like talents. The character strengths are interesting because they measure the strength of our character and the positive traits in our personality. They focus on our character strengths, they focus on our positive traits, and what we're like in times of excellence. And it looks for pathways to ultimate virtue. And so this has a lot to do with our personality, not just our talents like playing the piano or playing soccer or whatever it is. These are really parts of our character and parts of our talents and what make us thrive and be the best that we can be. The 24 character strengths are broken down into 6 categories that are bolded here, and I'll be talking about these 6 characters or virtues as well. So each of these 6 virtues we'll be talking about a little bit more in depth, and then each of the character strengths are underneath one of these 6 virtues. It's not an even number underneath each one, so some have more, some have less. Justice has the least, but their categories of the character strengths will fall underneath these virtues. So here they are broken down again by the virtues on the left, the 6 virtues, and then the 24 character strengths across each row. So take a look at that as well, but we'll be talking about each one more in depth. So strengths are not talents. I have to kind of reiterate that because a lot of times people confuse them with talents. Talents are things that are not grounded in morality. So if you play soccer really well, that has nothing to do with your morality. Talents are things that can be wasted. If you have a talent to play soccer, but you never play, that talent will be wasted. And talents can be innate, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes you practice really hard and become a good soccer player, but sometimes they're innate as well. You could see maybe a 18-month-old or a 2-year-old playing soccer really well, and you can see that they're innate, but they're not always innate. Strength, on the other hand, are part of every aspect of your life. Therefore, they're rarely wasted, and they are grounded in morality. The 24 strengths that are been listed there can influence our behavior, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. They're housed within those 6 virtues, and because they're part of every fiber of who we are, they're generalizable across situations and time. They must contribute to the fulfillment of a good life in ourselves and others, but we have to be aware of them and tune into them and use them in order for them to create greater fulfillment in our life. So they're morally valued, and they're morally valued around the world. So if you look at those 24 character strengths, they will be valued maybe with different little nuanced differences because of culture, but generally they are valued around the world. So these have been found in every culture, in every nation, in every race, in every age. It does not matter because these are kind of housed in each of us all around. So what are the 6 virtues that we talk about? Let's start off with wisdom. And again, the 24 will fall in these 6 virtues at some point. Listed in black here are going to be the character strengths that fall in this category, and the pink will be the explanation of each of these categories. So wisdom and knowledge is a cognitive strength that helps us to acquire and use knowledge that we gain from the world around us. So that makes us more wise. This is related to curiosity and how we discern things. Judgment here means discernment, not judgment like the negative connotation of judgment, like judging people. This is more about discernment. Love of learning is in this category, and having different perspective in each of the different areas. Our second one is courage. This is an emotional strength where we will exercise the way to accomplish goals, even if there is opposition, whether that opposition is internal or external coming from outside of us. So bravery and persistence and honesty and zest all fall under this category, giving us a sense of courage. The next one is humanity. And this is where we are befriending other people. And this tends to be a personal strength because it has amazing characteristics that are important from a virtue perspective, both psychologically, but also spiritually. Obviously, spiritually, we talk a lot about love and kindness and things like that. But this is also about social intelligence. How do we navigate different circles? And how do we navigate between maybe our job circle or our church circle or the different circles in our life? How do we navigate that perspective? Our fourth category here is the category of justice. This is a category that talks about our civic strengths that lie within our community. How do we involve a sense of teamwork, and how are we fair, and how do we hold leadership skills that help us in different areas of our life, whether, again, that is our employment, whether that's through our church circle, but how do we engage with other individuals so that is as smooth as possible and give each other justice and support and encouragement. Temperance is a strength that also has some spiritual flavors. We talk a lot about self-regulation during Lent, which just passed, but this is a strength that protects us from going in excess and doing things too much. So self-regulation definitely falls here, but things like humility and things like being prudent in certain situations, learning when to forgive others. And forgiveness, I won't be talking about that one too much today, but is all about kind of letting go of the pain of what someone has done to you. Not that absolves them or makes what they have done okay, but it's the ability to kind of set down that pain so that you can keep moving with your life. And from our spiritual perspective, we know that God will take care of things because he is a just and good God. And so even if people hurt us, God will have justice for us. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And so this is not about absolving or letting go or pretending nothing happened. This is about our ability to kind of let things, setting things down so that we can move forward with our lives. And then finally, the sixth category is transcendence. This is a strength that helps us to form a connection with the larger universe, with something that provides meaning. For us, this is a connection to God. And this is why religious and spirituality kind of falls in this category. But it's also with things related to nature. When we walk around in nature and like a beautiful garden, we appreciate God's creation of that garden and how excellent it is. It's a category of gratitude and hope and having a sense of humor and not being downtrodden even when things are difficult. So these are important characteristics as well. And we'll be talking about some of these also. So there again are six virtues. The 24 character strengths fall within those. And for the rest of kind of the talk, we'll see how some of these strengths come from each of these virtues and how we can later apply that to resilience. So that's what I'll be talking about from here on out. So the strengths that most people want, it doesn't mean they're the highest on your list. And if they're not the highest on your list, that's okay, because any strength that you have highest on your list can be used and applied to things like relationships and work and community and church and things like that. But the ones when they've done a lot of research, straight from the Via Character Institute, these have been the ones that people have found. I found it interesting that love is not in the top 5 that most people want, but there's a little bit here from each of the 6 categories. Most people want self-regulation. They want a sense of bravery. They want to persevere. They want to feel like they can create new things, and they want to feel like they can forgive others. That's why I spent some time on that a minute ago. Again, I found that love is not on this top 5, but there's little pieces of all 6 of those categories listed here. So again, even if those are not in your top 5, that's okay, because your strengths are unique to you and can be used uniquely to you. So I'm going to talk about a few from each of the categories. I'm not going to cover all 24, but again, if you want more insight, you can reach out to me. If you're, I think I'm going to cover about 12, so about half of them. So if you want some more insight on ones that are on the top of your list but are not listed here, of course, please reach out. I'll post my information again towards the end, and we can cover those more individually and specifically to you. But creativity is about thinking of new ways to do things. This is from the first category of wisdom, and it has to be useful and adaptable. So whenever you enter a problem, you can't exit that problem with the same way that you walked into that problem. You have to think of novel and creative new ways to get out of that situation. And so a person who's high on this character strength is able to do that, is able to find new solutions to problems and able to get out of difficulty and challenges in an adaptable way. And you have to make it useful to the situation that you're in and specific to the situation that you're in. So creative individuals generate ideas or behaviors that are unusual or new, and those make a positive contribution either to their individual life or to the group that they're in, whether it's their church community, work community, even in their family. They're coming up with new ideas of how to solve problems. A person that has another category under wisdom, the love of learning. This is a person who's not just desiring to learn for learning's sake, but this is kind of related to curiosity in the sense that they want to hold on to and deepen their information about something that they're learning. So a person who's curious is just looking for information. They're just seeking out new information. But a person who loves to learn deepens their understanding of that topic and holds on to it. So again, they can employ it into their employees or into their children or into their church service or into whatever it is. And it helps people to persist, even if they've gone through some negative feedback or some challenges or some setbacks. So it's really important to think about this because it takes a lot of energy to collect all this information, but also to hold on to it. But again, it has to be applicable to the world that you're in. A person who is curious, we just talked about that a moment ago. They're curious to explore and discover. And they have this natural desire to kind of be open to experience and to build knowledge and to just grow their repertoire of information in their mind. They're interested in exploring new ideas and activities and experiences in order to increase their own personal knowledge. So we all know people like this, right, that are just randomly collecting facts and using these facts to help them in their lives, which is, again, it's akin to that love of learning, where you're constantly learning, but also constantly trying to deepen that information to hold on to it. Curiosity is more about learning with new experiences, exploring, gathering a lot of new information. All three of those fall in the wisdom category. And the reason I chose these three is because they're so kind of interrelated to each other, very close to each other. And so if you have one, the others may be up there as well. All right, with the second category of courage, one of the most popular ones is honesty. And this is honesty when you speak the truth in a genuine and sincere way. This is a person of integrity, and it crosses across all domains of their life. So you will see them being honest when they're shopping. They'll be honest when they're talking with their family. They'll be honest and have integrity when they're in church, when they're at work. And they have these values that their goals accurately represent their values and their interests. So again, they're very connected with their values and who they are, and they take responsibility and accountability for their own actions as well. So this represents who they are internally, but also how they manifest themselves to people outside. And having integrity does take a lot of courage, because sometimes that is difficult in the sense that it's not always easy to be honest. So it takes courage to be a person of integrity in all realms of your life. So this is a very important character strength as well. And again, akin to spiritual values that we all have. Another one that falls under the courage category is bravery. And there is no bravery without fear. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. This is a person who's able to face their fears. Think of our martyrs or our saints in our church, rather than succumbing to the fear. I'm sure as humans, they probably experienced at least a twinge of fear when they were facing those situations. But yet they still go into those situations despite the challenge or the threat or the difficulty. So there's three kinds of bravery here. Physical bravery, like a police officer or a firefighter, they're going towards the danger, not away from it. Psychological bravery is someone who's willing to face something painful if it's going to help them to grow, or if this is a challenging situation, they don't shy away from it. And then there's moral bravery for speaking up for what is right. So if someone is like making fun of a group of people, or is being stereotypical towards a group of people, or standing up for what they believe is right, um, like things at work maybe that they don't believe are good, maybe they'll stand up for those things as well. So that's considered moral bravery. Moving on to the third category of humanity, one of the popular ones here is kindness. And this is someone who is kind, especially to people in need, but again, across many different areas of their life. And it is not just due to obligation or out of duty or out of principle, but these are genuinely people that are kind, and they listen to the suffering of others and want to be compassionate and want to be nurturing and taking care of others, and genuinely concern themselves with the welfare of other people. These are people that are empathetic and sympathetic to other people. They have a sense of strong social responsibility, that they feel they want to contribute to other people's well-being. And so it's not, again, out of obligation or duty. It is out of a genuine desire to do good. So kindness is one of those things that is really important under the humanity category, I should say. Another important one is love, even though it wasn't listed in those top 5. But this is usually one that is important because it's the degree to which you value close relationships with people. And this has nothing to do with someone who is introverted or extroverted. Some people think that the degree to which you value close relationships does not work for someone who's introverted, it only works for extroverted, but that is not true. Because again, this is about being kind and applying patterns of kindness to other people. But love is also about receiving love from other people. So it's about a reciprocal relationship between you and the closeness to another person. We all know people who are very closed off, and they may give to others, but they don't want anything in return, or they've been hurt, so they build walls. So this may not be one of their highest character strengths, but our ultimate goal is to break down those walls and have these different kinds of love. And so just like we know that there are different kind of love out there, like the brotherly love or the agape love or things like that, there are 4 kinds of love that are defined here. There's an attachment love between a parent and a child. There's an altruistic love for myself and my neighbor, love my neighbor as myself. There's a compassionate love for a close friendship or a relationship that is not necessarily like a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship, but it's still a close friendship. And then, of course, we have romantic love between spouses, partners, fiancés, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have in the category of justice, we have this category of fairness. This is a symbol of justice in the US. I'm pretty sure it's kind of universal, but if it's not in the UK, this is a symbol of justice. And the person holding balances because justice is supposed to be balanced. And the hand that you cannot see, the hand that is stretched, it has a sword, which is a symbol of the swiftness of justice and the sharpness of justice. And this person is also blind in the sense that she's blindfolded, in the sense that justice should also be blind, not biased, and not those things. And so fairness is an important character strength because it has to do a lot with treating people fairly, treating people justly, not just because they're your friend or they're your relative or your loved one. And there's 2 kinds of justice here. There's justice that involves logic, what is fair just by common sense, but also what is fair based on empathy and compassion. And how do you put yourself in someone else's shoes to try to understand what they're going through before justice is kind of exacted on these people. And so it is not about a biased decision, but about using your feelings wisely and understanding what is fair for everyone in this category. Another important one under the 4th category is teamwork. And this is someone who is contributing to the team's success. So whether we're working in community, like I said, this is not just about individuals, but how could you apply these character strengths to everything from your work group, to a sports team, to your church group, to your family, to your marriage? How can you be a good citizen and a good community to your country, to your church, to your office environment? How can you be socially responsible? How can you be loyal and patriotic? And so it is very important to work in teams. We're not in an island. It is not good for man to be alone, was said right from the beginning in Genesis 2. So how can we contribute to a team? And the higher this is one of your virtues and your character strengths, the more likely you are to contribute to a team and to social responsibility and to a group. Leadership is also related to this because we want to organize and encourage others. We want to set goals. We want to, a person who's a leader listens more than they just, exact justice on other people. There are leaders that clarify responsibilities and those that motivate their followers. So if you're committed to a goal, you're leading your goal, your group to lead, to find that goal and to manifest that goal. They provide wisdom, they provide inspiration. It's not a dictator at the top barking orders down on people below them. It's someone who is truly leading to meet the goal for the entire group. In the fifth category, we talk about humility. This is not someone who has low self-esteem or feelings of unworthiness, but it's also not someone who is bragging and doing things in excess or always seeking the spotlight. Obviously, this is a very Christian principle. Our Lord was very humble in throughout his life on earth, and even to the very end in Palm Sunday and things like that. And so this is not someone who's drawing attention to themselves, but is not thinking that they're better than others, but they're also not low in self-esteem. They have an awareness of who they are, but they're also aware of maybe potentially gaps in their knowledge where they can obtain some support and some encouragement from others and help each other along the way. Gratitude obviously is one of the most important spiritual principles as well. This is in the Transcendence 6 category. And this, again, does not mean that there are no problems, but the church in its wisdom uses the Thanksgiving prayer in all settings, from funerals to baptisms to weddings to negative events to positive events, because it's all about how we shift our perspective towards what is going well, not what is not going well. And so it's about finding our ability to recognize the source of goodness is outside of ourselves. Namely, our source of goodness, of course, is God. But it helps us to shift our perspective from what's not going well towards what is going well. Just kind of shifting that perspective with the knowledge that both exist, and often both exist simultaneously. So that's really important as well. And then I think this is either the last one or the second to last one in the sixth category. It's hope, another, again, very Christian principle. From a scientific perspective, this is a word of action. In spiritual realms, we kind of use this akin to faith. I have a hope and a feeling and a faith that things will get better. It's not just optimistic of thinking from the scientific perspective, but it's the ability to focus on good things that are still going to come, but give us an action to create goals, to create an action plan, to get to that desired future. We're not going to just sit complacent and hope that that future comes to us. We're going to act towards it. From a spiritual perspective, we would pray towards it. That's still considered an action. But it's more than just kind of like a hopeful perspective. It is also a perspective where we are focusing on things that are going to be moving forward, hopefully will improve and get better. But it involves, again, action, it involves motivation, and it involves an ability to get to our desired future. And so with those 12 things, again, this is why I'm not going through all 24, because it would take a very long time, but it can be individualized to each individual, can be applied to your work settings, work challenges, family challenges, even church challenges if you're having challenges in that regard. But in addition to the character strengths, we need to focus on balance in our lives. The more that we can balance these 8 areas of our lives, the more healthy mentally we will be. So we should focus on not just focusing on one area. For example, if you only focused on occupational and you neglected your physical health, your emotional health, your social health, your spiritual health, you're not going to be very healthy. So we have to balance as much as we can these 8 areas in order to reach greater well-being and resilience. We also have to recognize when we're not doing well. I have people that come in that are very healthy and they just want to focus on the character strengths and how to use them more. And obviously, we have people that come in that are very unwell, that are really broken down by life and life's challenges and things that people have done to them, and we treat them as well. They're obviously treated differently, but eventually, our ultimate goal is to use our character strengths. So the unwell category is like somebody coming in with a heart attack. You have to treat that immediate symptom, uh, return their heart to a normal rhythm, and then you can talk about ultimate treatments. Whereas the healthy person is maybe coming in for a diet change, or how can I apply exercise and things like that so that I don't get to the point of a heart attack. And so both are going to get treatment. Their treatment is going to be a little bit different, but your job is to recognize the difference between a heart attack and I'm doing well and I just need some tools like the character strengths. We also have to remember that stress sometimes makes us feel like we have to do everything immediately. Everything has to happen right now, but it will happen in God's timing. And part of what we do is to return people to hope, return people to a state of calmness, using their character strengths so that they can overcome their challenges, because the best is yet to come. We also have to remember the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit obviously are these lovely 9 things that the Spirit gives us. And the reason I'm bringing this up here is because there are 10 positive emotions that have been found in science that kind of overlap some of them with the fruits of the Spirit. And research tells us that the more that we focus on these 10 positive character strengths, or 24 character strengths, as well as these 10 positive emotions, we tend to shift our perspective away from what is going negatively towards what is going well. And it broadens our ability to problem solve and to come up with solutions. So the other number that you have to remember is these 10 positive emotions, that the more that we enhance them, the more we're able to problem solve out of situations. These positive emotions come from our brain, come from our perspective and moving towards goals. And also when we recognize positive emotions in others, then we take a larger perspective on life and see how others are doing as well, and we can help each other out. So this comes from our brain, our prefrontal cortex. And there's activity that's been shown in the brain in certain areas when there's more negative emotion versus when there's more positive emotion. We have found also that sometimes people think negatively because they think that if I think negatively, I'll be able to avoid the problem. It doesn't mean we should hide from our negative emotions. Negative emotions are an alarm system telling you to pay attention to things. But research also tells us that positive emotions are important to survival as well, because again, they shift our perspective away from what is not going well towards what is going well. So it is really, really important that we focus on these emotions and build them up and help us to grow a little bit and help us to enhance our survival. So the broaden and build theory kind of helps us. There's a lot of research done around this area as well. And it's been found that positive emotions help us to broaden. So what we found is that negative emotions will narrow our brain's ability to problem solve, and positive emotions, those 10 positive emotions, will broaden our ability to think about that problem and help us to move away from just all of the negativity to create more action towards the positive. And they did studies on this where they showed people a negative video and they showed other people a positive video, a more cheery, positive video that elicited those 10 emotions. And the people that saw, they gave them like a puzzle or a problem to solve after they saw these clips. And indeed, the people that saw the negative clips, it took them longer to problem solve than it is for people that saw the positive clips. And so that was kind of proof that negativity narrows our mindset, narrows our ability to problem solve, whereas the positive emotions help us to expand our mindset. So it helps us to build things like our physical health, our social health, intellectual health, and psychological health. And also it may be somewhat temporary, but the more that we focus on those positive emotions, the better we will be able to last a little longer and grow in those situations and problem solve better. They have also found that in children that are attaching well to their parents are more likely to persevere. They're more likely to access intellectual resources. and they're more likely to have survival tactics as well. And so this broadening and building perspective is really important in relation to those 10 positive emotions. It also helps us to undo negative emotions. So the more that we focus on positive emotions, it helps us to undo those negative emotions. And this fixes both physiological things as well as our cognitions and our thought process. So those 10 emotions are really, really positive and really, really important for us to grow in addition to our character strengths. In terms of resilience, things obviously are not going to go without problems forever. There's going to be some challenges at times, and resilience is about our ability to adapt and be flexible and learn even in difficult situations. So just like these flowers that are flourishing, even in a dry, arid, kind of barren, no food, no nutrients environments, sometimes we have those experiences in our life, but we want to be able to be adaptable and flexible and learn as well. So in order to be resilient, we have to be perseverant. And perseverant is one of the character strengths, but the Bible talks a lot about being perseverant as well, and not giving up every time there's a difficulty or a challenge. Perseverance, from just the dictionary definition, is being steadfast despite difficulty or despite a delay in our success. So not just succumbing or giving in every time there's a difficulty or a challenge. And again, there has been research around the brain and persistence, and research tells us that every time we are persistent, our brain is flooded with a neurotransmitter, a neurochemical that helps us to feel good and to continue the cycle of being more and more perseverant. So our dopamine levels in our brain, that kind of feel good neurotransmitter, neurochemical, increases when we're perseverant, and it reinforces our habit of perseverance. And when we are feeling negative and we're not being perseverant, those kind of chemicals decrease and don't allow us to be persistent in that as well. So the Bible definitely, over 2,000 years ago knew this and talked about perseverance and to continue the race, even when times are difficult. So when we are perseverant, we have to look for opportunities in every challenge. When we are going through a good moment, we should savor that. We should know that not everything is insurmountable. There's nothing that is insurmountable if we keep trying. And we also have to give ourselves permission to be human, that sometimes we won't feel as motivated and other times we won't feel as like we're doing well. But that is just a moment in time, and we do not have to give up, and we can continue to keep going, even if it's slow movement, and we can get advice and support from other people along the way. And this is all important because, again, perseverance leads to resilience. Resilience is this upward spiral of well-being, taking the world and looking at it more optimistically. It's the ability to play a bad situation well. And we have found that these individuals have good emotions that buffer them from depression, and it allows people to see all possibilities. You see the negative and you see the positive, and you see them simultaneously and together. You see both possibilities together. So when we are going through a difficulty, most people will either deny initially, and this is kind of a defense mechanism because it's so overwhelming. But over time, resilient people will realize that they're grieving and that they had a loss, but they don't give in to that loss. They don't succumb to it. Instead, they search for meaning, and they search for hope and for a future. And so they, again, recognize they've gone through a difficulty, they've gone through a pain, they've gone through a challenge, but you can hold both simultaneously. So they look for opportunities for connections, for self-discovery, for nurturing a positive view, for having a hopeful outlook, for creating goals, for taking decisive action. And they understand that change comes with life, but we're not going to look at it as insurmountable. We're going to take care of ourselves, and we're going to take care of this problem. They're able to reflect on their life and pick out areas of their life where they had challenges and deconstruct those memories of their challenges and trying to figure out how they escaped from those challenges. And then they look for areas of strength. And then they apply that to a narrative or a story of their life history of resilience. And then they tailor make a solution to their current problem, one that has their supports and one that has an anticipation of what's happening. So they're looking at all their past, their present, and their future to find a way to escape from this difficulty or this vulnerability. A resilient person, a person who's not very resilient, I should say, is someone who just sticks their heads in the sand and pretends like there's no problem, or they have a lower self-esteem. But hopefully, if we build our self-esteem, if we face the situations that we're in, if we create good relationships along the way, we'll be able to deal with the problems more successfully. Also, we should reframe the situations that we're in, not just look at it from a negative perspective, but instead create meaning out of it by using our strengths and accepting that adversity happens, but not to dwell on it over and over and over and over again without looking for solutions or a way to kind of overcome this difficulty. Resilient people also talk to people to help them to find ways to deal with their feelings. The only way to regulate our emotions is to name them. If you can't name all your emotions, which there's just some listed here, you at least start with these four. You're feeling either happy or anxious or sad or angry. From there, you can start in the middle of that and kind of branch out to more complex emotions. And then when you are able to name those complex emotions, you are able to manage them a little bit better. You should not talk to just anyone. Not everyone is going to be a person who's supportive. Some people may hurt more. So you should talk to people that are warm, people that are genuine, people that are going to understand what you're going through and be empathetic, people that are consistent, and people that are patient. All of these individuals are good people to talk to when you're not feeling so great, because they will be consistent with you and help you to walk out of that problem. So kind of just to summarize here in the last few slides, we should stop our negative thoughts and reframe to something that is more positive, something that is more to our strengths, because our thoughts are so powerful and can really affect much change. We should also practice gratitude. Of course, there are going to be problems, but gratitude is really purposefully and mindfully noticing what is good, and that helps us to shift our perspective from all the things that are going wrong to some things that are going right. And when we do this, I love this quote from a positive psychology researcher named Tal Ben-Shahar. He says that when you appreciate the good appreciates, it increases in value. Again, we should practice gratitude because research has shown us that people that practice gratitude are less anxious, less depressed, less lonely. They're able to keep a gratitude journal so they can see their progress and all the things that they actually have to be grateful for. It is easy to list a list of negatives, but this purposefully makes you look at what is going well. And you can just list 2 or 3 things a day and say what has been going well, what has been beneficial to you. We want to practice altruism. Helping each other creates a ripple effect around the world and creates positive feelings of resilience in each of us. We want to apply our own story of resilience, again, remembering times where you escaped from vulnerable situations. How did you do that? Maybe you can do the same things kind of again. That's really important. Again, here are the 10 positive emotions that you could focus on. This obviously will be sent out to all of you, but a lot of them overlap again with the fruits of the spirit, like love and joy and peace and serenity. A lot of them overlap with that. So you can use those fruits of the spirit as well to increase positive emotions, which again help us to broaden our perspective on how to solve a problem, not decrease that perspective. When problem solving, you want to analyze the situation, maybe create a list of potential interventions that you can use, then pick interventions from that are most likely to work, create a plan, use those interventions, and then after you've implemented the intervention, which one has worked best, which one has not worked best, and evaluate it, and then come back to the drawing board to solve that problem more and more. Most people will just sit and mull over the problem without really creating a plan. This slide helps you to create a plan, which will make you feel more resilient and more successful, and will also help you to implement your character strengths. Again, most people are rushing through life, things back to back without any time to breathe. This is a way for us to slow down, because research tells us that when we slow down and pay attention to the small things in our life or the big things, enjoying a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with a friend, enjoying a dinner with someone, enjoying a conversation with someone, and you're sitting and enjoying these moments, we tend to bank them in our lives, in our mind, so that when we have a sense of difficulty or a time of difficulty, we can withdraw from that bank account during those times of challenge. So here are some ways that you can savor or slow down and appreciate things. Take a walk in nature, stop and smell the roses, as they say, but take time to slow down, because that helps us to bank positive memories and then kind of bring them back out when things are not going so well. Again, these are the areas of balance that we talked about. We need to balance our spirituality, our physical life, our intellectual life, our relational life, and our emotional life. The SPIRE and PERMO models are important for models of wellness. The more that we have balance in these two areas, the more likely we are to have greater well-being and greater encouragement and resilience for our lives. We also have positive coping mechanisms. I'm not going to read them all to you, but the most important thing here is to accept that there are difficult situations. And once you've accepted, act upon it and act in a way that is positive, and also solve problems as they come. People tend to bury their emotions and bury their feelings and bury their problems, but they always resurface, and they usually resurface in a more difficult or ugly way, unfortunately. So solve the problems with your coping skills, with these coping skills, with all the ones you've been learning today, with your character strengths to help you to deal with that problem more appropriately. So again, a resilient person is one who expresses gratitude, is one who uses their strengths, is one who slows down and savors good experiences, is a person who uses positive emotions that help them to build problem-solving skills. It's a person who examines their own story of resilience, and it's a person who's altruistic and supportive of other people. So again, know that you all have these character strengths inside of you. Know that you have potential. So use those character strengths, work hard, reframe your thinking, be patient. And I may have shown this to you all before, but this is one of my favorite paintings. I actually have it hanging in my office. It's from an artist from Belgium, done all the way back in 1936, almost 100 years ago. And this is supposed to be a self-portrait, so this is probably the artist himself. He is looking at an egg, but he's drawing a full-fledged bird. And we all have that potential inside of us to be this bird, to be flying, to reach our highest potential, even if we're only looking at an egg. We just have to be careful about our thoughts, because our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits become our character, and our character becomes our destiny. So even if we only see this egg, we have the potential to become full-fledged birds and to reach our highest potential using our character strengths. So I love this quote so much. Let us not be surprised when we have to face difficulties. Of course, difficulties are going to come. And when the wind blows hard on a tree, the roots actually stretch and grow and become stronger. So let it be the same with us. Let us not be weaklings. Let us not yield to the wind that blows, but to be strong in spirit and resist. And again, if you want more individualized ways of how this can help your specific career, relationship, your academics, your work, whatever it is, the QR code on the right is to my website. The one on the left, so you can reach me that way through the form that is on that website, right on the first page there. That will take you to that form. You can reach out to me that way, or you can reach out to me directly on WhatsApp with the QR code on the left, and you can reach out to me that way by phone, by text, through those two QR codes. And here they are again. My website, my email address, QR codes. So feel free to reach out at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Christine.
Okay.
I learn so much every time you speak, and especially for me in your message today, it's one that we should have hope, even if we find ourselves struggling now with the way we cope with difficulties in life. We should have hope. It is God's desire that we be resilient, that we bear the fruit of the Spirit, that we experience a positive way of living, we experience well-being, and this doesn't come just by finding the right prayer in the Agbeya. It comes with effort on our part, but God is on our side, waiting, watching, eager to help us. And the things that Dr. Christine has spoken about, having a different view on life. Many of these activities she suggested are ways in which we can begin to experience this. If you have, we have some time for some questions. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, then please use the chat function. I'm certainly going to ask a question first. And firstly, I want to welcome Father Makarios Salib, who is joining us from Maryland. I'm glad to have people from all over the world. Thank you, Abuna, for taking time to be with us. And I hope that this is useful for you and your own people. My question, Dr. Christine, is I have my sheet of strengths in front of me. And I'll certainly continue to encourage people to take the test on the Via Character website. It's free. When I look at it, I can see it describes me. It describes me very well, you know. My lowest strength, I won't say my weakness, my lowest strength is self-regulation, you know, so it has found me out, you know. But I look at my first 5 characteristics, and I don't mind reading them out here. Spirituality, kindness, humor, forgiveness, and love of learning. And gratitude is number 6, you know. How do I look at these, both the ones that are strongest and the ones that are still strengths, but not so strong in my experience? How am I to apply these in my daily life? I'm thinking, let me just say what I'm thinking, and then you can see whether I'm in the right track. I'm thinking that when I come against some situation, I want to ask, can I apply my spirituality here? Because it's one of my strengths. Is this a situation where my humor will help me to be positive? Is this a situation where my ability to forgive people will be positive? Is that how I'm to try and use them? What would you say to me?
Yes, absolutely. So there are, again, all 24. The good news is all 24 are inside of us. So that's why we say the lowest ones are lower strengths and not weaknesses. And that again is a reframe in and of itself, rather than calling, you know, something like self-regulation a weakness. But leaning on those top 5 is really important because this is, again, how you show up in the world. This is characteristics of your personality. So it comes naturally to you. It's kind of how you're hardwired, let's say. So you lean more on your spirituality. You lean more on God to help you when there's a challenging time. It's good to know that someone else is in control. God is in control, even if there's a challenging situation. If you can look at it from a perspective of humor, I've done studies, I mentioned this in the last times we met, I've done studies on people that were in the Holocaust just to look at their resilience, because clearly those are people that are still alive, and how did they overcome those challenges in order to start life over when they didn't know if they were going to live or die. And so a lot of them did lean on humor. They were able to find small things of humor, even in those dire situations that they were in. So even in the most difficult of circumstances, if you can lean on things like humor or things like gratitude, even the smallest thing that you could be grateful for today. I had a hot meal, or I had a brief conversation with someone that was really warm. That even those small things shift our perspective towards something that is going well, as opposed to just constantly thinking of the negative. And again, the research has told us that the more that we focus on this and the more that we focus on what is going well, the more able we are to problem solve against the things that are not going so well. So it opens and expands our mind and helps us to see things from a different perspective. And it is not just, you know, a life of negativity and woe to me. And again, that's what God wants, is for us to be hopeful. And I find it, you know, just because we're just coming out of Easter, the intensity of how difficult Good Friday was. There's a day of pause, the day of savoring in between, and then the resurrection, which is the maximum joy and potential and growth on the other end. So I think that's a lovely, like, kind of contrast between Good Friday, a day of pause, and then the resurrection.
Yes. Someone has asked the question. These are all questions I would ask myself. Many thanks for an insightful and informative talk. May I ask if the ranking of the attributes means that the ones at the end are actually weaknesses? You've explained no, but in this person's case, humor came last. So what does that mean? This person says, does it mean it's a weakness? But in mine, for instance, as I said, my lowest one is self-regulation. I understand that, you know. Is there something we should be doing with these lower ones? If we develop over time, will the results come out a little different? What would you say?
Yeah, I've been taking this myself every several years for at least 10 years now, and the top ones are pretty stable. They'll change a little bit based on what's happening in my life. But again, the bottom ones are not weaknesses. They are all strengths. You just use them less, or you're hardwired to use them less, but they're all there. All 24 of them are there. So you may find sometimes where humor may come into a situation. You can build on it certainly by using it more, or paying attention to it more. But again, it's about using your energy to use the ones that come naturally. Number one, so that you're not so frustrated, but number two, because those help the weaknesses because they come so naturally. So use the ones that are coming naturally, but they're all there and they're all at your disposal to use at any given time.
I guess as you're saying that, I'm thinking of what you said about playing the piano. We don't want to look negatively at this list of weaknesses of strengths, do we? And say what a shame. You know, humor is last. How can I become the funniest person at church? You know, that actually will stress us out more, and it will make us feel negative. You know, we don't want to feel negative about how these have come out. We want to focus on what strengths do I immediately have to hand. You know, this is a positive thing. You know, and whatever this particular person's top 5 or 6 things are, this is what they should be looking at, I'm guessing. You know, it is like what you said about playing the piano. Maybe this was a list of musical instruments and piano was last on my list. That's okay. Like you said, I can play around on the keyboard every now and again. But if the oud comes out top, then I should enjoy playing the oud and be pleased that I have that ability. You know, so how should we? Every one of us who's looking at this, you know, what should we be looking when we're looking at the top 5 or 6 things? How should that affect us tomorrow when we wake up and we have those 5 or 6 things in mind? What difference does it make that we've identified them in a more formal way?
Yeah, so again, you're using these naturally. It's about more paying attention to which ones you're using naturally so that you can enhance them even more. So I think perseverance was one of my top ones, and spirituality. So again, with the spirituality one, you realize that God is ultimately in control. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, or you shouldn't, you know, do the best that you can do in certain things. But ultimately, God is in control, and there's something larger than me that is managing my life, manage our lives as is deemed fit, as God sees them deemed fit. Things like perseverance, knowing that, yes, I'm going through, for example, a difficult challenge, let's say at work or with my children or with whatever it is, but I am perseverant. So I'm going to lean on that, knowing that I can overcome this challenge. It's one of my strengths. And yes, this is a tough time, but it doesn't mean that I can't come out on the other end. So whatever your strength is from those 24, whether it's honesty or whether it's creativity, if you're creative, you can say, well, let me find a novel solution to this problem because I'm a creative person. That's not one of my highest strengths, but it's kind of in the middle for me. But it's, you know, if that's one of your higher strengths, know that you can come up with a novel solution to this problem that you're experiencing. So it doesn't eliminate the problem. It's not a, you know, I'm waving some magic wand and it disappears. It's how do I navigate that problem using these strengths?
And I'm thinking that someone has also said she likes the term lower strengths. It makes her feel less frustrated by the order of the results. And she says, does looking for funny things count as humor? And what I'm thinking as I read that and thinking of myself is, in a way, these are all possibilities for me to deal with difficult circumstances in my life. Is that a way of looking at it? These are all possibilities built into me. And at different times, different ones will come to the, maybe even if humor is at the bottom, there'll be a time when I tell a joke and it brings something to a situation. These are all possibilities. Some of them are much more natural to me. Some of them are ones I use unconsciously all of the time, you know, but we should see these all as possibilities for success and for positive outcomes in whatever we face tomorrow. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you were driving on an icy road, right? And you're learning the tools to how to manage your car. It doesn't make the icy road disappear. You just sometimes have to put the car in a lower gear or drive slower or do something else to make sure that you navigate that situation safely. This is the same kind of idea. You're going to use different strengths in different situations. It's not going to make the icy road disappear, but you're going to get through that safely and wisely because you're using the strengths that already come naturally to you, what you've trained yourself to use, maybe gotten some extra help in how it applies to a certain situation. But yes, these strengths are very useful. And unlike some of the other strength inventories that are out there, those relate to talents and how to apply them to things like jobs. This is specifically to your character and to your personality. So again, it's how you show up every single day, whether there's a problem or whether things are going well.
Thanks for that. And can I ask, many people here are parents or grandparents. On the Via Character website, there is a children's version of the test, and Dr. Christine said it's for sort of 10 years and older children. If we were to encourage our children and grandchildren to do this, how would we use the results to build a greater positivity about themselves as well? How would we manage that? How should we do that?
Yeah, some kids can be very hard on themselves. Perfectionism is a danger that is out there, or feeling some despondency or despair if things are not going well in certain times, certain ages. Those, especially like the middle school and high school ages, there's a lot of. We talked about this in the other three talks. There's a lot of biological changes that create some depression, some anxiety, and so it's important to encourage them that everybody has strengths. It's just a matter of shifting our focus towards that, not what is not going well. And so using again those strengths to help us to build our weaknesses, not just focus on the weaknesses and beat them until they escape somehow. Again, you're not going to get rid of the icy road. You're going to learn how to manage your car a little bit better. And that's what's really important in learning this, because we're going to be dealt obstacles and challenges all the time. We have to learn how to navigate them. And it's about holding both simultaneously and using your strength to see that you have the ability to navigate that challenge and the ability to do so.
As you're talking, I'm thinking that, again, tell me if I'm wrong. I want to almost teach the children in my care, that these are their superpowers. The top 5 or 6 are their superpowers, because
Absolutely.
I think that's the way they would understand it. How can you apply your superpower to whatever? You're struggling with your homework at the moment. How can we use your superpowers to try and fix this? You have a problem with a friend at school or church. How can we use your superpowers? Is that sort of language that's appropriate and helpful
Yeah,
for our
that would be
children?
great for kids. I mean, like they like
Or even
comic
adults? It might be good for
or even
adults as
adults.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have superpowers, but
Yeah,
we focus on the weakness a lot more,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. The
And like I
kryptonite.
said, some people think that is survival, that if I focus on the weakness, I can get out of a difficulty. But research after research after research tells us it narrows our mind's ability to problem solve when we focus on the negative. So
Then maybe just one more question then, and this is from Father Macarius. He says, would using this positivity be able to be applied to the enhancement of a couple's relationship? How does thinking in a more positive way, thinking of our strengths, how does this apply and help in a couple's marriage?
yeah, absolutely. It's important to know each other's strengths. This could be another talk, but there's the love languages as well, that have been researched widely. There are 5 love languages, and how you speak your spouse's or your partner's love language is really important as well. Because you could be speaking one language, they're speaking a different language, and you're kind of clashing, or not meeting eye to eye, like two trains passing in the night. This would help you to understand that they have strengths and you are speaking to them in that perspective. So even with like parents, for example, noticing when they've done something correctly, as opposed to always harping on the negative. If you've told them a million times, put your shoes away for your child, and they haven't done it, but then one time they did do it, notice that they did that and praise that. So the same with spouses as well, noticing where their love languages are. For some people, that is languages of gifts. For others, that is words of affirmation. For others, that is you know, being there and doing service for them. And so understanding what the other partner needs and what their strengths are and speaking to those strengths would be really key in getting people to communicate a lot better. Because ultimately this is about, again, applying it to yourself, but also applying it to a greater community, whether it's your home community or even larger than that.
And then finally, perhaps you could just say a few words. Yeah, someone has said about the love languages. I will ask you what this person says. Will you give us a resource? But I will actually be asking you to come back later in the year and to speak to those of us who are married or thinking of marriage or getting married, to speak about that in particular. Is there a resource that you would recommend?
Yeah, so you could just Google, there's a free quiz on that one as well. You can just Google the 5 love languages, and it will list those for you in the top 5. You have a need for all 5, so they're needs basically. Again, they're words of affirmation. I'm sure I'm going to miss one. Words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gift giving, and touch. And so all 5, each of us have all need for all 5.
Yeah.
But for one person, it may be words of affirmation. You need to hear something positive from your partner, but your partner is giving things like touch or gifts. Well, you may still need the gifts, and the gifts are great, but you need words of affirmation. So it's almost like a disappointment, or it falls on deaf ears because they're giving something and you need something different. So the 5 love languages are really important as well. And knowing
is there a book you recommend on that? Is there a classic book on that?
Yes, let me get you the name. Give me 1 second. But yes, those love languages are really, really important. Gary Chapman is the name of the author. Gary Chapman.
And is that necessary that both spouses take a test, for instance, or can I guess what my wife's love language is?
It's not a very long quiz.
Yeah.
From my memory of it, it's been a while since I've taken it, but it's not very long. But it's helpful to know what your partner needs first.
Yeah.
You have all 5 needs again. But it's helpful to know what your spouse needs versus what your needs are. And if they're not the same, you have to speak the other person's language in order for them to understand you.
Yes. Thank you. And then my last question to you is what would you say to those of us, or all of us here, who are members of Christian congregations, perhaps servants in Christian congregations, maybe clergy as well? What should be our takeaway from this idea that we should be having ourselves and encouraging in others a positive attitude to ourselves, to each other, to God? What's your takeaway for us?
I think you started that with the questions, Father, when you started the questions and said we have hope and that God wants us to have hope. It is easy to fall down a spiral of negativity, and just to ruminate on all of the problems and all of the challenges. And the last 3 years have probably been the most challenging for a lot of people, in their relationships, in their work, in their health potentially. And so not to get into a place of a spiral of negativity, there is a lot of hope. And this is a very hopeful principle that we have all of these tools inside of us. It's like your immune system. You just have to use it and pull it out and apply it to the situation that you're in, and not to get to a place that is hopeless, because it's very easy to become despondent and hopeless. This kind of hopefully will pull us out of that and realize we all have the tools and there's help out there to help us to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Let me just give a word of prayer and blessing. I'll turn off the, trying to see where, here it is. I'll just turn off the